Louis, what were your overall impressions of the Buffalo Bills draft?
Well, I think, Vic, starting right away on day two, we knew that getting a wide receiver was going to be something that was going to be top of mind for them. And I thought that the profile of the player was going to be ultimately the most important thing, meaning it just couldn't be any wide receiver. It had to be a guy, to me, that was an outside lane winner, a 50-50 ball winner, a guy who was a bigger body, who could really look. I'm not saying that we're equating wide receivers to off-road vehicles or bad weather vehicles, but a guy who just had that big body, durable type of athlete who you thought come November and December, because of how physical they were, they would be able to continue to play at a high level in terms of physicality. And Keon fit that perfectly. So I mean, I love that pick coming right out of the gate. Look, Cole Bishop is someone who I watched a lot of tape on. I think he's the typical Sean McDermott type of pick, meaning he needs some development in the back half of the defense, in the deep part of the field, as far as his ability to pattern read, whether he's a cover two, cover four safety, or middle of the field guy. But when he's coming downhill and he's playing in the second level zones, or he's blitzing, or he's in run support, he fits exactly the kind of things that you would want him to do in that role. Dwayne Carter is one of my favorite now. He's one of my favorites. He's one of the guys who I had highlighted in a piece I did for ESPN before the draft. I think him combined with Ed Oliver, like those kind of guys are guys who are disruptive interior players. And Dwayne's someone who can move all the way from a 1 to a 3 in terms of lining up over the nose, lining up over a guard, or moving all the way out and playing defensive end, although that's not where he's probably ideally suited. But he just plays hard, and he has great hands, and he has great leverage and power and ability to push the pocket. And then lastly, really for me, look, Ray Davis is just a stud. I mean, you saw him put up big numbers in the SEC in all different kinds of ways. And it wasn't just on the ground, it wasn't just inside, it wasn't just outside, it wasn't just gap schemes, it wasn't just zone schemes. He did all of it. And probably most importantly, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can take it a distance now. So him and James Cook, that right there, those are 4 darn good draft picks coming right out of the gate that should keep Buffalo squarely where they want to be, which is always in contention.
Let's talk about that receiver room. They brought in, of course, Curtis Samuel from free agency, just recently signed Chase Claypool. And now you're, of course, with Keon Coleman. As you see that group, and as you see a team that is looking to replace the top 2 receivers it had from last year, how sufficiently has that been done for, let's start with this 2024 season and then beyond?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it obviously is going to fall on just how does Keon continue to develop? How does Dalton Kincaid continue to develop? And then probably most importantly, how does Josh Allen now kind of like enter that realm of I make my guys better? Because it's not just on them. I actually take them and I elevate their game to levels that maybe people didn't foresee, a la Patrick Mahomes, because that's really where we're at with it. You can't always, when it comes to quarterback play, just expect the quarterbacks, the wide receivers in and of themselves to be so, really, really excel above and beyond what typically you would think that their upside is without the help of the quarterback. And so I think this is going to really be this year an indication of just how much of a force multiplier, so to speak, Josh Allen really is. And look, Keon is a key. Khalil Shakir is obviously a key to continue now to move up a notch. Kincaid has to move up a notch in terms of his dependability, third down, red zone, 2-minute. All of it now is going to kind of like work together. But I think they're on the right track. Look, they did as good a job as you could possibly do at this point when you lose a guy like Stephon, who, over the past 4 years has been an absolute production machine. I mean, there's no 2 ways about that. Yeah, I understand he drops a big time pass against Kansas City that could have been the game winner. I get all that, but he also, look, he did all that he could do for that organization while he was there. And now it's his time to turn the page and move on. But I think Brandon and Sean have done a heck of a job of trying to formulate that wide receiver room the way philosophically you want to do it, ideally. But this really is about Josh now. It's about the next phase of his development.
Big picture, Louis, this offseason, of course, saw a core of this team, a veteran core of this team exit. And especially on the back end, a little uncertainty about Micah Hyde, but let's for now say he's not there. And then no Jordan Poyer, no Tre'Davious White, and then Mitch Morris gone from center position. So given all that left, and we've discussed the draft picks, some of the work they did in free agency, nothing flashy. Is this a year where it's possible the Bills take any kind of backward step before they can move forward as these younger players develop?
Yeah, I think that's possible, because we know that, the differentiating factors at this level of football, especially when you're talking about Buffalo and typically where they want to live, which is in the playoffs and contending for Super Bowl titles, the differentiating factor usually is team chemistry. It's about compatibility from, within position groups, between position groups. It's about playing complementary football, not in terms of run, pass, and that kind of complementary football, but I'm saying, like, the defense understands what it needs to do in relationship to how the offense is performing that day and vice versa. There is a great synergy between all three phases of the game. And that usually comes with experience and with one another. And that's just something we've all experienced no matter what team sport you've been on. And when you remove as much of the core that has been in place, that has had those experiences, you can't help but expect that there's going to be some growing pains that come along with it. There's going to be some issues where there's going to be some moments during the season where you go, maybe we're a little deficient in that area, or maybe there isn't. Maybe it comes together very quickly. Maybe it does. And again, I think, the team that I think everybody obviously is chasing is Kansas City. And they have, speaking of them, they have retooled their football team, quite honestly, in a pretty dramatic way as well. Now, some of the key players are still there too. When you're talking about the quarterback and you're talking about the best defensive player, maybe in football, and Chris Jones. So Buffalo's not doing anything that other teams haven't tried to do and has still been able to have a lot of success. They're just going to have to, we're going to see whether or not they can, again, just like we talked about that next phase of development for Josh Allen, this is the next phase for this team overall, which is change is inevitable, but how far of a step back do we have to take? Or do we not have to take any because we're able to get it going and we have the right football character guys that can kind of push us forward into the next phase?
A big topic of this offseason has been who will step up and be the, quote, new leaders, or who will exert more leadership. A lot of that seems to be falling, of course, where it should, on Josh Allen, but he can't do it alone. As you look at the names, the players on this roster, where do you stand in terms of how they'll find this leadership?
Yeah, I think the youth is really going to have to step forward. Look, I think guys like Kincaid have to step forward. I think guys like Shakir have to step forward. James Cook has to step forward. Greg Rousseau has to step forward now. Ed has to step forward. Those are the guys who have to play. Taron Johnson has to be they have to be out front. And I think there's still enough of those people there that understand the culture as it presently existed, and then how to maintain that culture and build upon it. But I think a lot of those guys right there, it'll be a collective effort underneath Josh. But there's no doubt he's the tip of the spear, though. I mean, he has to be the one, and because at all the team, like right now, again, the team that everybody's chasing, is there any mistake who's at the tip of the spear for them? No, and everything else falls in line behind that, and rightfully so, because right now, he's the perfect pro. He's the prototype regardless of position. He's the prototype. And so I think if we are to believe, and I'm one of those people who is a big believer in Josh Allen, that he has those unique qualities, this is the year for him to do that. This is the year for him to kind of show, I'm on that kind of level. And the rest of the guys have to pull their weight too. And some of the names I just mentioned, they're going to have to step up.